Welcome to Ask the Security Guy. I'm Holly Magnuson, and I'm here this morning with Sean Corman. Hi, Sean.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back. Good to have you back.
Yeah. No pun intended.
No pun intended. Um, I actually just got that. I'm a little slow on the uptake. And for those of you who are wondering what we're talking about, you can ask Sean offline. So today we are talking about a news item that kind of hit just a couple of weeks ago, a threat from Turkish hackers to Apple. You want to kind of give us a little bit of the highlight of the backstory there, Sean?
Sure. So a couple weeks ago, there's a hacker group who's calling themselves the Turkish crime family, contacted Apple, and they're trying to extort them for about $75,000 in Bitcoin or $100,000 in iTunes gift cards. Yeah, that's pretty cute. They're claiming that they have a large repository of stolen iCloud or other Apple email accounts. And with those, they're saying that they can remote wipe all of the data on those Apple devices that are associated with those accounts. So the numbers vary. Right now, the hackers are saying they claim to have 300 million Apple email accounts, but if you talk to them, in other venues, they're saying they have up to 559 million. So numbers vary. They're big numbers overall. What's interesting about this as well is the hacker group has contacted numerous media outlets about this, and in more recent news, the hackers are now threatening to reset a small number of iCloud accounts and remotely wipe the victims' devices on April 7th, tomorrow, if their demands are not met. Apple is not negotiating at this time, and they're saying that they have no reason to believe that the threat is real, but they are monitoring their own infrastructure to see if it's in fact true. So that begs a number of questions. One, you've got the hacker group. They're posting YouTube videos with alleged correspondence going back and forth between them and Apple, or them demonstrating how their attack works. People are asking, well, do they really have a compromise into Apple's system, or have they collected a large number of usernames and passwords with the Apple domain? Which is possible, because let's face it, username and password lists are out there all over the place, from compromises that have been happening around the world.
Well, and I believe last year was one of the biggest years for compromises, and just so much information is out there.
Yeah, it was an incredible year for compromises and data breaches. One of the best yet, well, depending on how you look at it, best or worst. So, there's a couple questions I'm getting a lot. The first one is, what do the hackers want with my stuff? In this case, nothing. In this particular case, they're not after anything you have. If you have an Apple device and you're feeling like you're at risk with this threat, they're not after your data. You're just a leverage point between the hacker group and Apple. And what the hackers are counting on is that the sheer number of accounts that they claim to have will give them leverage with Apple. But as far as an individual goes, in this particular instance, nothing. If they wanted to do something with your data and information, they've already done it, if they actually had access. Typically, what's going to happen, though, when hackers do go after a person's personal account, and that's what they're going to do, they're really going to focus on your personal, Gmail account or Yahoo or Hotmail or whatever, with the purpose of identity theft. That's their end goal, because that actually has value. Not much, given that the current value of a stolen identity is less than $20 right now. But when you get that in numbers, in large numbers, it starts to add up. Um, the second question that we get, that I'm getting a lot is the threat real? So folks in my line of work have been tossing this around quite a bit. Apple is being, well, Apple, and not saying much that's useful to us. They're just basically trying to control it from a PR perspective. So at the end of the day, because they're a walled garden approach to everything, we don't know a lot about their infrastructure, their security controls, or whether or not this could be a real threat, which leaves us with likelihood and guessing. So for myself and for a number of others in the security world that I've read and reached out to, we're all coming up with a similar conclusion in that it's unlikely that this is an actual breach in Apple's security. It is more likely that they have put together a large list of usernames and passwords from other compromises that they're available out there on the net. Different lists that contain large numbers of email addresses and passwords. The hackers also know that people typically tend to use one password for multiple accounts. And they very often will use the same password for their personal account that they use for their work account, for their bank account, for other things. So they know there's a good likelihood if they've got a list of accounts that are all in the, either iCloud or Apple domain and the associated passwords, chances are they're going to work. Or if they had that email address from another associated with another account, the same is true. So they know that there's a pretty good likelihood that people are going to be people and use the same password for multiple things. Now, we constantly beat on this drum, Holly. It's don't do that. Use different passwords for different accounts and use a password manager to keep it all straight. Because these days, let's face it, we do have a lot of accounts.
Yeah, I think I'm up to over 200 that I manage, and without LastPass, I would be using the same username and password for everything. And so,
right. It's impossible to remember all that stuff. It just, it just is.
And the cool thing is, LastPass is now free.
Yeah.
They only charge if you want the family account where you can, have shared passwords within the family.
Right.
That's a great deal.
There's before it was cheap, now it's free. So there's really no excuse not to use it. It's one of those drums that we beat on regularly. It's one of the few products I actually endorse, but I use it myself. So, you can't get much more of an endorsement than that. The last question we get a lot of is, what should I do? Okay, so like I said, the hackers are claiming that on April 7th, they're going to wipe a small number of these accounts to prove to Apple that they can do what they say they can do. Okay, well, obviously this has yet to be seen. And even if it is seen, a small number of accounts doesn't really mean much because of the other sources for this information, right? So that boils down to, okay, what actions can I take to protect myself from being part of this, trial run, so to speak? Apple and iCloud have the ability for one to use and support strong passwords. So if you haven't already, change your Apple ID and your Apple password to something unique and use a passphrase. If you have any questions about what a passphrase is, go out to security.apu.edu. We've got a whole section on building a good, strong passphrase and what that looks like. But also, Apple supports two-factor authentication for their iCloud and their Apple accounts. And the link is out there. We have a link to this article on support.apu.edu. We've got another link on security.apu.edu that take you directly to the instructions from Apple. We actually also sent out an email alert to campus a while back with the same instructions for people who were concerned. Because this did hit the news and it did, freak a lot of people out, and I can understand why. You know, and it's out of the abundance of caution, man. It's good to be careful. If you're not using an Apple device, so say for instance for your Google account, your personal Google account is what I'm talking about. Google also supports two-factor authentication for their stuff. And that's been in the email I sent out. That's also on the support.ap.edu article and on security.ap.edu for specific instructions on how to do that. So again, you know, if you haven't done this already, make sure those personal accounts, Apple, Google, whatever, are using a strong passphrase that you're not using anywhere else. If you have a concern about this April 7th thing being real or this attack being real, you know, change your password and set up two-factor authentication. These companies have done a lot of work and put in a lot of development effort to make it easy and make it reliable. I use it myself, even though I don't use Apple, but I do use two-factor authentication on whatever service supports it. And a number of services do. Your banks, credit card companies, a lot of websites offer it now, just for basic accounts. So there's a lot of good security tools that are available that you just have to use. So.
And if you do have a question about this, you can go ahead and put that in the chat window, or you know, other questions in the security area. I know Sean's always ready to answer and educate whenever he can about our security.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we have the ISO@ap.edu email address. We've got a couple ways you can contact us on the security.ap.edu website. You can also find us on support.ap.edu. For if you have email messages that you think are spam or that you're phishing and you're not sure of, we have an email address set up specifically for that at support called spam@ap.edu. And you can just forward your message, you know, whatever message you're suspicious of, forward it there. And we've got a team of people who are trained in what to look for that review all of those messages that come in and will respond and let you know what it is you're dealing with, whether it's real or not. So the tools are there, and we just want to be a service to the community.
Yeah, because it's important, you know, we have so much online now that protecting our information, protecting our bank accounts, all of that, it's so important now because it's all out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And remember, I mean, you know, most people have a misconception that their work account or their bank account is going to be the primary source the hackers are going to go after. And it's just not the case. Your personal email accounts, your Apple ID, those are the things the hackers really want. Because if that's your primary personal account, that's where all of your password reset information, your forgot password emails are going to go to for everything else that you're using. So if you start thinking about what all is connected to your personal accounts, that's really where it's at. And, you know, let's face it, the bad guys know it as well as we do.
Well, so far, no questions have come in yet. Did you have some other statistics that you've learned in recent days that you wanted to share with us?
I do. Not fully done putting those together yet, so I'm going to save that for our next session.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
That's okay. That's okay.
So I'm not seeing any questions yet again.
All righty.
Quiet group. So if something happens tomorrow, what should someone do? I mean, there's other ways to back up your iPhone devices, aren't there?
Yes, there are ways to back up your devices. Apple has that. Google has that. You can download them. But if you go out to the support pages for each one of these types of accounts and just search for backup, they've got great articles out there on how to back up your stuff just in case.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of multiple backups of my devices whenever possible.
Yeah, well, in a cloud-enabled world, offline backups are king. Because if everything is in the cloud and you have nothing offline, and the cloud gets compromised, so to speak, or more accurately, your account gets compromised, and you kind of put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, not a fan of that. So last call for questions, and I'm not seeing any. So with that, Sean?
Going twice.
Well, thank you again, Sean, for your research on this, and we'll watch the news and see if we have people tomorrow that are crying the blues. But remember,
hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. Change your passwords. LastPass is a great tool. It's just lastpass.com, and they have videos on how to use their product.
And they work on every device out there.
Yep. Well, with that, we will. Let me glance one more time, make sure there's no questions. Nope. So thanks, Sean, and we'll see you guys next month.
All right, sounds good.
Bye-bye.